Hi everyone, I hope you're hanging in there. This video is for chapter 4, just a quick rundown. I'm going to try to keep it under 5 minutes, but I want to give you some guidance if you're struggling with this chapter. The first thing I wanted to talk about is, before I even really talk about the chapter, just to give you a visual of the neighborhood that Scout is really living in. So you see, I stole this offline. I could have made it, but then I didn't. So you see that this is where the grammar school is. This is where they go to school, and then they have to walk past the Radley house to get to home. And that's where you see that's kind of important in this chapter. This is where Atticus lives. They've got a tree house in the backyard, and the Radley house is here. It might be important, well, it will be important later on. Atticus comes home from downtown and he passes Mrs. DuBose's house, which is right here. And we also see Miss Maudie's house is across the street from where Scout and Jim live with Atticus. So anyways, school, Radley house, where Scout and Jim live with Atticus, Mrs. DuBose's house, and Miss Maudie. So that's that. I just wanted to give you that heads up. The chapter 4 starts with a great sentence. She says, "The remainder of my school days were no more auspicious than the first." And I really like that line. I've always loved that line. Auspicious means that it gives a favorable hint towards outcome, a favorable hint of what's going to happen in the future. So basically she's saying, yeah, school didn't go any better than it did my first day. So the first thing she talks about in the chapter that I wanted to talk about is the knot hole. And if you're having a hard time visualizing that, again, look at the spine of your book. There is a knot. That's like if you actually open the book like this and you see, because if you have this copy, this is actually the tree. And a lot of times I will talk, because they do a really good job symbolizing it, because obviously the tree is in a different season on one side of the book than it is on the other side of the book. But on the spine itself, there's a knot hole, and this is what we're talking about when we're saying the knot hole in front of the Radley place. I also took this offline. And so what Scout sees there as she's walking home, because on her first year of school, she gets out earlier than Jem does, she first sees some gum. And when Jem finds out that she's taking gum from the tree in front of the Radley place, he's very freaked out, and he tells her to spit it out, which is probably good advice. Don't take candy from strangers. Scout doesn't really heed that. But then they find Indian head pennies there, and then they're wondering, well, geez, can we keep this? And they're kind of tossing around the morality of taking things that don't belong to you. So there's that. They talk about hot steams, which is you can reread. That comes up later in the book. It's not super important, but it's good to know about the myths again that these kids like to tell. And then there's the tire game, which might be a little confusing to you. So Scout ends up in the front yard of the Radley house, and this is why. She contradicted Jim. That kind of ticked him off. And so when they were playing this game, what they'd do is they'd crawl into a tire and then they'd roll it down the street, because I guess why wouldn't you do that if you're a kid? And Jim pushes the tire. This is Jim in the movie, and this is Scout, and that's Dill. He actually pushes it really hard, and he accidentally makes it so that it rolls into the Radley house and front dooryard. And so then she has to run for her life, and he has to go ahead and get the tire. So if that part of the book doesn't make sense for you, here's a quick visual from the movie of what they're actually doing when they play that game. Then they play some other games, which is what my discussion actually talks about. They're playing Boo Radley games, and so read that part or pay attention to that part of the chapter. It's towards the end of the chapter. Talk about what's going on and whether or not you think they're innocent games or if they're actually pretty cruel games. Would you want games played like that about you? And do you think that they're being super malicious when they play these games? Explain your answer. And I also ask why Scout is unnerved, or she doesn't like these games as well as Jem and Dill do. We actually really don't see the answer to that until the last page in this chapter, just as a hint if you're going to answer this discussion question. So that is it. Bye.